Hello everyone, it is Joe here from Omnipoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCGO codes, including the stuff from Vivid Voltage, make sure you go ahead and check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using that code Omnipoke. For today's video, we're going to be talking about an archetype which I've been pulling my hair out over for the last week. You may have noticed that myself and Jack, as well as Shay from the Slowpoke Well, have been doing a lot of testing on Tabletop Sim, and one of the ones that has caught my eye the most is a very interesting deck from Japan, combining the new Rapid Strike Urishifu VMAX with Welder, Mewtwo, and Reshizard. It's one of these things which I've kind of been struggling with. I've thought at times it's probably like it could be the best deck, and there are times where I'm just like so far away with the deck and it just feels terrible. So yeah, we're going to be breaking down this MewFu archetype and see if it is actually going to be, you know, one of the top contenders going forward, or if it is a big dreamer deck, because it's a really strange thing where you're combining some historically very, very good cards alongside some very good new cards with some great attacks. You'd think it would all go well, but there's not obvious synergy between the cards. So let's get into it. First of all, let's look at the Japanese 60. This was on How News. It's literally a tweet from a Japanese player who said they won a tournament. Don't know how big the tournament was. Don't know how many players were involved. Any of that sort of thing. How prestigious. But all I have to go off of is a tweet of this is a winning deck. And yeah, it is a wacky combination. Just a few things to pick out. These two cards here are escape ropes. It's a Japanese promotional artwork. Anything else you can't really see. This is the shiny Crobat, so it's just two copies of Crobat in here. That's a Talonflame that's poking out here. A Reshizard and a Breakzard are in the deck. Two Flareon GXs. The new Celebi we'll talk about in a moment, so I'll go over what that card does. But essentially the core concept of the deck is that you can use your Mewtwo to copy Flareon or your Charizard attacks, basically, in the early turns, or you can just use the Charizards themselves, obviously, to give you Psychic-type coverage, which is good against other Urshifu players, Fire-type coverage, which is good against ADP and other Metal variants, even any new Bronzong deck coming out, or Luke Metal, or anything that stays around right now in the format. We know how good Fire is. Fighting-type coverage, which is good against, Dark with the Turnitus. It's great against Lightning as well, with Pikarom and those sorts of archetypes. Mewtwo allows you to hit for other Mewtwo's, which people might be putting in their decks so that they can beat Urshifu. For example, Pikarom probably going to be playing those Mewtwo's to sort of counterbalance the fighting weakness that they have. Now you have a Mewtwo that can hit straight back into them. I'm a little bit concerned that Mewtwo Wars might be coming back into the format thanks to Urshifu's Psychic type coverage. I might have to do a separate video on Mewtwo Wars because I'm petrified that that's going to be the state of the game as soon as Battle Styles drops. And you also have one other type coverage in the deck. You have Empoleon, which is a water guy. You can hit 260, technically in a turn, with Welder and an attachment of a Rapid Strike energy. You can use Empoleon's attack and move an energy back at the same time, which is pretty powerful. So yeah, there's a lot going on here. Really, it's a heavily focused Welder deck, of course, and you're trying to probably use early Double Blaze GXs, early Flareon, Heat Stage, I think its first attack is, where you just attach fires around your board, and then you're trying to set things up for snipes with the Urshifu, or you're trying to take, like 4 prize turns or 3 prize turns, where you gust up the Crobat, you gust up the Dedenne, you knock out the Dedenne, and you either knock out the thing that you hit with your Mewtwo or your Reshizard, or you knock out the thing that that they have on the bench, either setting up another Dedenne or another Crobat, or you're taking a 1 prize out as well. So trying to be a kind of race-style deck, having a very, very limited supporter pool and a few things like that, which makes me a little bit nervous, but we'll get into that now. So first of all, just a quick look at the new cards. To refresh your memory, Urshifu VMAX seems like an incredible card, to be honest. I'm completely enamored by it. There is a lot of hype around it. I believe it's fully justified, and maybe not even justified enough because people haven't actually played with the card enough to see how insane this card is. But I think this is possibly like the best attacker of the era that we have right now. Like in the Sword and Shield era, I think it's probably the best attacker that we have. Better than Zacian, I think, in terms of how strong it's going to be and how influential it's going to be. It's a fighting type Pokemon. It has Gale Thrust for 1 fighting. You do 30 and 120 more if you became active this turn. And Gmax Rapid Flow is the attack that you try to spam in this list much more often, or at least utilize much more often. The Gmax Rapid Flow, you discard all energy attached and you do 120 to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon. You don't apply weakness and resistance for the bench, of course, but you can bring up Crobat, you can bring up Dedenne, both weak to fighting. How insane is that? And you can, take multiple prize knockouts is the idea. You can attack turn 1 with the baby Rapid Strike Urishifu down here, as well as the Empoleon, because you are playing Welder in the deck. So an attachment of a Rapid Strike Energy, which provides both a water and a fighting in one attachment. So think of it as like a double Rainbow Energy from back in the day, but it only goes onto Rapid Strike Pokemon. So a Welder and an attach away, and you can turn 1 hit 150, or from Empoleon 130 and move an energy back to the bench. So that could be protecting your Rapid Strike energies by putting them onto benched Urshis, or it could just be moving a Fire Energy onto a Mewtwo or a Reshizard to then open up Flare Strike for you. So yeah, really good options. The Empoleon also has the Emperor's Eyes ability that stops Pokemon without a rule box from having abilities, so you're denying Snorlax, Jirachi, Amazing Rare Jirachi as well, Celebi, which is also on the screen, Manaphy, all of those sort of like annoying baby Pokemon you can, not like annoying baby Pokemon, helpful baby Pokemon, you are stopping them with Empoleon, which is pretty nutty. And of course it's a water type coverage, which can help out in the fire matchups like Centiskorch, Reshizard, Victini VMAX, which I also quite like. Empoleon is going to be nice for that type coverage. You can make a big push in those sorts of matchups. And there's also, in the Japanese list, there's this one of the Celebi that we're getting. I don't think this will be in Battle Styles. I think this is going to be in our V starter boxes with the Venusaur and the Blastoise. But anyway, it has this ability, Forest Exploration. Once during a turn, you can look at the top 6 cards of your deck, choose an energy you find there, reveal it and put it into your hand, and then shuffle the other cards back into your deck. You can see the reason why they're playing the Celebi. It can give you extra outs to find your Welder activation, which is nice, or it can just help you push in the late game for the Rapid Strike energies, which are kind of like the most important cards. So it's just a one-of in here, but it does serve a nice sort of like late game role by grabbing you an energy card, which is kind of some of the most important things you can look for. So that's the cards that you may not be familiar with, just sort of refreshing your memory. So let's talk more about the concept of this deck. I've kind of gone into it when we were looking at the list itself, but some really big strengths which makes me think this could be a pretty high tier contender in the format is, firstly, you have 4 type coverages. Psychic type coverage is very good, seeing as though most people will be playing their own Mewtwo's to deal with Urshifu in some regard if they're current tag team decks. I've seen from Japan, ADP has incorporated some Mewtwo and attacking options. Pikarom currently plays Mewtwo and attacking options. Welder decks can all play Mewtwo, and there's already been Welder Mewtwo decks. So Mewtwo is one of the easiest, like, splashable answers to Urshifu, just hit them for weakness kind of thing. So it's going to be important to hit them back with Psychic type weakness, which is nice. Obviously we know Fighting type. Obviously we know Fire type is very good. And the Water type is good because of how many Fire types are good. So 4 very, very impactful weaknesses being hit in your deck, which is just crazy. It reminds me of like 6 Corners back in the day. It was a Noble Victories deck that basically just had some of the most efficient one prize attackers at the time, all hitting for weakness and just playing energy switches to use the right ones in the right matchups. Essentially, it was like Cobalion, Virizion, Terrakion, some of the Outrage attackers, those sorts of things. It was just trying to mush all the best attacking Pokemon into one deck, trying to hit for weakness in the right matchup, and that's exactly the feel that this deck gives me. And obviously it's a Welder deck, so you have high tempo, you have early game aggression at your disposal, which is nice. The numbers actually line up really well for the choice of attackers that's in this list. Double Blaze and Flare Strike both set up really nice numbers into a Gmax Rapid Flow the next turn, because you're doing 230 or 200. So then just a Gmax Rapid Flow for the extra 120 means you can knock out tag teams easily, you can knock out VMAXs pretty easily. Especially if you use the Flare Strike first. And at the same time, you're either setting up the next VMAX in the back, or you're setting up the next tag team in the back, or you're taking that easy 1 prize, or you're setting up a Crobat or a Dedenne for a potential 3 or 4 prize turn with a follow-up Gmax Rapid Flow. So yeah, it's insanely high tempo. Imagine just like an early 200 in the dome, then you finish off the big thing with also setting up something on the bench with a snipe attack. It is wild. So the numbers line up really, really nicely for the selection that we've got in this little deck. And I'm starting to get the feel that Rapid Strike Urshifu is like, he's just so good that there's going to be a ton of decks shoehorning him in just because the double snipe is just so efficient. It's like super, super good. I know you might think I'm just hype beasting this, but it is worth building around, and there's been so many different archetypes from Japan playing Rapid Strike Urshifu that it just tells me like it's doing well with so many different variations that the format is almost warping around one card. It actually feels like that. There's like so many other decks. I'm going to have to do a separate video just on Rapid Strike Urshifu and all the different builds you can play, because so far I've seen like 5 or 6 different, like completely different decks that may not even seem reasonable to put an Urshifu in, and he's just there because the snipe is crazy. And it's giving me the vibes of, you know, a Zoroark or a Garchomp C, where the cards' inherent stats in the format right now just mean that it's going to be a win condition just by putting those combinations of cards in your deck, and you just play the other best sorts of attackers all in one deck. For example, Luxchomp and Dialga-Chomp, these were some of the most powerful SP decks at the time, and Garchomp was obviously a big reason for that because he was inherently so good of an attacker. Zoroark, kind of a different case because he was just an engine that allowed your deck to work very, very well, but in his own right, he was an efficient one-energy attacking attacker. So the concept is still kind of there that the format warped around Zoroark, the format in a way warped around Garchomp, and I think the format could be warping around Rapid Strike Urshifu. I think it's actually that good. So yeah, biggest challenges for the exact list that we've just talked about. There's a really big lack of draw supporters. You're just playing 1 Guzhala and 4 Welders, and only 2 Pokegears. So there is a big worry that you miss Welders for a start, especially because you only play 2 Gears and 2 Hearths, and only 10 energy, so it's not the highest odds of getting full activation for Welder, or any activation, to be honest. And at the moment, there's not much stamp proofing going on. You don't have any Stellar Wish or Amazing Red Jirachis, which you sometimes see. Well, you mostly see Stellar Wish Jirachi in welding decks. We know Center Scorch often plays that. We know that Blounds and Tempozard currently are playing a ton of Stellar Wish Jirachis. So having none of those in the deck makes you quite vulnerable to stamps and swells and that sort of thing. So that's a big kind of miss right now. I know Mewtwo or Welder Mewtwo oftentimes doesn't play any of the Jirachis either at the moment, but oftentimes they will play, you know, like a couple additional supporters, like 1 or 2 research in the deck at the same time, because they sometimes have extra acceleration options here and there, or more efficient energy attacks in there as well. So just things to bear in mind. I also think there's a strange mix of the search options going on right now. It was playing 4 Quick, 2 Calm, 3 Cherish, and it can make it quite hard to find some of your Pokemon, especially when you're just playing 2 Mewtwo, just a 2/2 Urshifu, like 1 Reshizard, 1 Breakzard, 1 Talonflame, 1 Empoleon, 2 Flareon. Like, it's such a weird mix, and you're trying to have some quite specific turns in a lot of situations, so trying to sort of buff those counts or give yourself better search options is something that I definitely look for with the list. And I also do think that the deck will be reliant on Urshifu VMAX. I think one good thing about being relying on Urshifu VMAX and setting up damage is that if you're getting stamped, sometimes it's like a stamp to 4 because Urshifu can win you the game with a Gust, for example. So unlike other Welder decks where you go down to like, you take your first 3, then you take another 2, and then you get stamped to 1, and you're like, ugh, I lost. It's like now you can take 2 prizes and be threatening game with Urshifu in a lot of situations with snipe damage. So you're going to be inherently less weak to stamp than other Welder decks because you're eyeing up a ton of things all at once that can be in range for you to snipe and win. But I do think it's still awkward because if you are getting hit with Marnies at least, or if you are getting hit with those stamps even to 4, you still need to find Welder plus Rapid Strike energy at times so that you can do out of nowhere an Urshifu doing 220 snipes, and sometimes you have to do that back to back. If you've had a slower couple of turns and you're behind in the game, sometimes the only way back is if you use Urshifu 2 times in a row, which is needing Welder Rapid Strike over 2 turns, and that's not always that easy. So those are kind of the challenges that I foresee with the deck. So I've reduced down the Japanese 60. I think the concept is so good, but I don't think necessarily the 60 card list that we saw is going to be the best way that we play this deck. Oftentimes that's how we see things sort of translate over to the sort of Western deck lists. We normally strip it back, and we normally try and just like buff the core concept as much as possible. That's always how I like to build decks. I always like to simplify and just make plan A work more often. So here in front of you is a skeleton list with 12 slots remaining. It's actually more spacious than I initially thought of this deck, because you are trying to just get early tempo with a Mewtwo or a Reshizard, and you know you're happy for them to get knocked out if they just put enough damage on the board earlier, if they just take that tempo 2-prize knockout in the early turns, that sort of thing. And you let Urshi be that sort of mid to late game finisher, unless of course your one type coverage is going to be overwhelmingly helpful for you. For example, if you're up against a metal matchup, you'll just try and spam the Reshizard more. If you're up against a fire matchup, you'll definitely weave in the Empoleon and make sure that he gets to attack at least once, that sort of thing. So that's something to bear in mind. But yeah, this is going to be the core, really, of the deck. I've stripped away the... what have I stripped away? The Talonflame. The Celebi for now has been stripped away. It's still a reasonable card for sure, because it can help you find those Rapid Strike Energy cards. Also, we've got rid of the one-of Guzhala. We've got rid of the Weak Guard Energy. I do think this is trying to prey on weakness, and I do think to some extent that Mewtwo War thing that I'm kind of worried about could be mitigated by playing a Weak Guard or two in the deck kind of thing. What else have I gotten rid of? The stamps I got rid of because I'm playing an aggressive Welder deck. I don't want to be stamping people. I want to be getting my plan A off more often. And I've also got rid of the Breakzard. Seems like one of the slower cards. Got rid of the Talonflame because I would prefer to have proactive draw when I'm playing a Welder deck. Those are the sorts of things that I've cut so far from the list. I got rid of the Crystal temporarily. You could definitely think about having that in. I think those are the big things that I cut from the Japanese list to sort of reduce it down to this sort of form. And currently the Poke Gears are out. They could be coming back in, and we'll talk about it in a minute, because it depends what sort of engine you want in the deck to see whether or not you want the Gears, or potentially you want Jirachi or something else like that. So yeah, let's talk about those final 12 slots and sort of the approach that you want to have. My first reaction would be wanting to buff some of the counts. So in the bottom left corner, you can see kind of, I just want to have another Mewtwo. I want to have another Urshi. I want to have another Reshizard. Possibly another Flareon. Could be interesting. Another Giant Hearth. Only playing 2 Hearth and 10 Fire has been punishing so far through testing. I definitely want to add in more Giant Hearths to make it more viable for you to hit your Welders. In a similar vein, Gears and or Jirachi Nets could be an option. If you are playing Scoop Up Nets in general, you may want to think about some of these Pokemon. Zigzagoon is a really, really good card with Scoop Up Net in the game. It opens up snipe damage to allow you to Double Blaze KO some opposing V Pokemon turn 1. If you just hit like Zigzagoon and 1 net, which is crazy tempo. You could have the Zigzagoon available to you so that Empoleon can knock out Reshizards all in one go, which is really good. And it just opens up Urshifu to potentially kill more things as well with snipe damage. So it could be a really nice math fixer for you. It also means that you can heat stage into Flare Strike with Zigzagoon Ping quite a lot to knock out tag teams. So really, really good math fixer. I have tried the Scoop Up Net, and I think one of the big reasons to want Scoop Up Net is because it makes Zigzagoon so much better. I know that in my Tempozard and in my Blound lists, I definitely like the Oranguru Mewtwo combo as well to protect you from Marnies and making sure that you can draw into your next Welder, which is really nice. So I could foresee that being a case. I kind of think the Jirachi, Mewtwo, Guru, Zigzagoon thing all become one sort of option because you'll just play nets and build around nets to make them more powerful. Another option is having Octillery, just because I've mentioned that in that late game you need to find those Rapid Strike energies and you only play 3 copies, so having Octillery to then just guarantee that for you again means that you're kind of stamp proof and you have that game plan, but you know that you're going to hit at least the Rapid Strike energy so you can actually set up towards that sort of play. I think one thing to bear in mind is I think Urshifu is again meta-warpingly powerful as an attacker, so much so that a lot of Japanese lists aren't playing helpful basics because having a basic on the board means that if they just gusted a Dene, they take an easy 3-prize swing, which makes the prize map too easy. So I think there is a big reason to be playing less helpful 1-prize Pokemon in the format because they get punished much, much harder by Urshifu. So It could just be the sort of the times that we will be in with Urshifu around that you can't really sit with these one prize Pokemon. That's why I'm actually not playing Scoop Up Net Jirachi, but I really like the Zigzagoon, so I'm still kind of torn on it. So right now I'm too worried to play Jirachi, so I'm just playing Pokegears instead to hit those Welders a little bit more often. I've been buffing the counts. I think it's important to buff your attacking counts so that you don't start with a Dedenne or a Crobat, something like that, because again, against Urshifu, it's really bad to start those Pokemon or just have them in play if you can help it, because they're easy Gust prizes for them, and they're easy Gust prizes against ADP and all this other stuff, obviously. But it also means that you can't use that card to draw if you started with it. So having an extra Mewtwo, having an extra Urshi, definitely going to be nice there. And then just more stamp proofing kind of options. I've played Oricorio in the Fire decks for sure. Cricketune V is a new option, which just allows you to draw until you have 3 cards in your hand. And if he's active, he allows you to draw until you have 4 in hand. So again, Marnie proofing, stamp proofing, just some like mid-game help throughout as well. A random extra card here or there can be nice to just trigger. So that could certainly be worth the slot. And a research, as we've seen, some Mewtwo welding variants play 1 research or 2 research, and it's certainly reasonable because there will be turns where you can, just use the first attack on Urshifu VMAX instead of the second attack, so you don't have to weld it, you can have a turn off. Thanks to Heat Stage, you can sometimes have a turn off and actually just research and deep dig into the deck. So certainly a reasonable supporter. We know how good research is. So here is going to be my current build then, my 60 card list right now that I'm rocking. Like I said, I have tried out the Scoop Up Net thing, and I think the thing that impressed me most was actually Zigzagoon of the Scoop Up Net combo. But right now I've just buffed counts, really. I want to get that VMAX into play, so I'm having that 3rd copy of the Rapid Strike. I've got 2 Reshiram and 3 Mewtwo Mew in here. So in theory, we have 10 decent starters for us. We have 3 Mewtwo, 3 Urshifu, 1 Empoleon, 2 Reshizards, and 1 Cricketune. So hopefully with 10 good starting Pokemon, you won't be starting the 2 Dedenne, the 2 Crobat, or the 1 Eldegoss as much. That's always the hope. And you can just see that I have jam-packed it with Pokegears, a ton of Cherish Balls in here as well. So you can hit those early Dedennes or also get the early Flareon into the discard pile if you are thinking of, if you have the possibility of whiffing Welder, or if you want to just use Heat Stage anyway, because sometimes the math works out better if you just do the 30 prod into other damage later on, rather than going all out and going early Double Blaze GX. So yeah, this is going to be a simplified shell right now. Like I said, I'm kind of skeptical of playing 1 prizes just because of the potential amount of Urshifu mirror you could be seeing, because I've seen Urshifu in a ton of decks, and I'll go into that in another video. I absolutely have to, because I think the card is crazy. So let me know if you guys think Rapid Strike Urshifu is as crazy. I've actually covered up his face with my face. That wasn't intentional. But I'll have to do another video on Urshifu, because the more I've played with this format and the more I've seen Japanese lists come out, I've seen this guy pop up in every single deck because he's just that good. I think he's just that good. I think he is meta-warpingly strong. And yeah, I mean, I've enjoyed playing him in all sorts of ways. You can weld him, you can mustard him, you can just put him in any deck that has any synergy with sniping at all. There's going to be some weird weakness coverage things going on. I'm expecting some Mewtwo Wars. I'm expecting an uptick in Dragapult. I'm expecting all these sorts of things. So I'll have to put my thoughts all into one video and stop getting distracted throughout this one. But yeah, let me know what you guys thought about the wacky MewFu deck. Do you think it's the real deal? Or do you think it's just some, wacky dreamer madness? I'll hear your thoughts down below. Thanks so much for watching today, guys. Hope you did enjoy this style of video. And if you did, please leave a like, and I'll think about doing more of them. Cheers.